There's no suggestion that Sarah Crew, the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police, is an anti-Semite. We're not saying that. What we are saying is that I believe Sarah Crew and the Crown Prosecution Service should have prosecuted Bob Villan singer Pascal Robinson Foster. You've heard me talk about that a number of times. And we have this bizarre spectacle. It's the right thing, and fair dues to Dame Karen Bradley, the chairwoman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, for calling back the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police to give further evidence. Just take a watch of the Chief Constable of West Midlands, Craig Guilford, being grilled by the Home Affairs Select Committee earlier this afternoon.
I asked the question about why we're using different incidents of football involving violence where Israelis were involved as a way to highlight the threat that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans played into the community.
It feels to us, from everything we've seen, that there was a need that you felt that you had to justify banning these fans, and that scraping was done to find a reason.
Right. Well, that's absolutely not the case. I'm really sorry if it comes across in that way. That was absolutely not the case. The information, the intelligence that we received, that we documented, and we've shared absolutely all of that with HMIC FRS very, very recently, was all gone through. The mistake that was made in terms of the West Ham was one individual doing one Google search because he couldn't find the other, he couldn't find the reference because it wasn't there within the system.
I will be really surprised if the man you just heard speaking there, Craig Guilford, isn't in his job in 24 hours. He absolutely should not be. Ruth Jacobs is the chairwoman of the Jewish Representative Council for Birmingham and the West Midlands. Ruth, thank you for joining me this evening. I think it's the first time we've spoken. This is just shameful, what is happening, and fair dues to the Home Affairs Select Committee for calling this man back. I don't know what your view is, I'll hear it now, but I would be very, very surprised if there aren't a lot of people in West Midlands and beyond saying, can we trust the police here? What do you think?
Well, you've asked me to speak on this programme as a spokesperson for the community. So what I can tell you about that is that there are a number of diverse views within the community. The Birmingham Jewish community is about 1,500 Jewish people, and you would not imagine that everybody has the same view on this. So there are people who feel very strongly in the same way as you have described it, and there will be others who do not. I can only tell you of my own experience in terms of dealing with the police, with West Midlands Police, once we were encouraged to have some form of consultation with them, which was very regrettable that we weren't engaged at the very beginning in September when the discussions first started. We were only brought in on October the 17th, the day after the SAG decision was announced. So I'm not here speaking in a personal capacity. I can only reflect to you what has happened. I
totally get that, Ruth. So when they actually did bring you in, when they did consult with your representative council for Birmingham and the West Midlands, what happened in that process? You said it was regrettable. The decision had been made. In what way were you thinking?
I made it very clear when we had the first meeting that it was absolutely nonsense that we had not been brought in to discuss it, the whole situation with them beforehand. And I've said it several times since, that if we'd have been engaged with the police from the beginning of September, we could have maybe well had Maccabi fans coming to the match, because we would have been able to enlist the help of various contacts that I and others have to ensure that the ultras perhaps would have been prevented from coming. Mm-hmm. So there were all sorts of options that were available.
And just sorry to interrupt you, Ruth, but just for clarity, you know what you're talking about when you say ultras. I do too. We're talking about the small numbers of Maccabi Tel Aviv fans there are some who are thugs and yobs and hooligans. We're not denying that for a second.
As in any football
Absolutely.
team. Yeah. So we could have helped with that. And we could have maybe helped with some of the recommendations, or some of the suggestions to the decision making that was made either by the police to the SAG or to the SAG itself, who never consulted anyone from the Birmingham.
That was the group, the security group, SAG. What does that stand for? Sorry.
Standing Advisory Group.
Thank you for that. That was the group that made the decision.
Yes.
But given that you could not influence that decision because the decision had already been made, what is your view of West Midlands Police and the approach they took? You said it was regrettable, but can you take them seriously when here we have the Home Affairs Select Committee calling them back and saying that essentially the full picture was not there and lies were told?
Look, I've heard that. I've watched it all this afternoon, and I watched the first one as well. And I don't feel it's. What I want to say is this: that the whole situation seems full of conflicting reports. It's impossible to. I find it impossible to come to any conclusions because no one story matches another, and that's what one of the MPs reflected. But
surely the conclusion to come to, Ruth, if the story doesn't match another, is that the truth is not being told and hasn't been told.
But we don't know who's not telling the truth. That is what my concern is. As far as the West Midlands Police interaction with the Jewish community from 17th of October, and actually since October the 7th, 2023, is they have given us every support we possibly could need in terms of securing the community and making us feel safe. This instance is obviously a different kettle of fish altogether, and it is very hard to justify some of the statements that have come out. But I am in the position of trying to hold everything together. So I'm not going to engage in a police bashing experience. I know that there are people in the community who feel very strongly that the Chief Constable should go, and go tomorrow, if you like. And there are people who are already feeling that this whole business has just dragged on and hasn't come to any conclusions. And hopefully the HASC will come to some sort of concrete decision about what's to happen or what should have happened. But as far as what you can get from me is a sense that the community felt very disgruntled, cross, angry, frustrated, disappointed at the decision that was made to ban the fans, couldn't understand it for a long time, and which is why my organisation called two meetings with the police to come and explain to the community what was going on. Whether people believed what they said or they didn't, that's individuals have to come to that conclusion.
Ruth, I wonder, given the apparently exemplary experience that you've had with West Midlands Police previously, given that they have, in your view, supported the Jewish community, especially after the dreadful anti-Semitism that has ratcheted up since those appalling Hamas terrorist attacks on the 7th of October and the ensuing war in Gaza, I wonder what you think might be behind the contrast in approaches, especially as if it was so good, and I don't doubt your sincerity in that for a second, but what I'm saying is there does seem to be a serious contrast in how they have approached this. I'm not asking you to bash the police per se. I'm not asking that. What I'm wondering is, surely you must be at the very least baffled at what has gone on here.
I am baffled, as a lot of other people are. But what I think also is, I do not, and I categorically believe this, I do not believe that there was an anti-Semitic motive behind the police's recommendations. I believe that there were people on the SAG and in the City Council who have a motive to prevent an Israeli team and to prevent their supporters coming.
Is their motive anti-Semitism?
Well, I think it must be backed by anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism, which to my mind, anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is the same. And I feel that this was never been properly explored. But I think there are certain councillors who have a very strong anti-Israel and they would deny anti-Jewish, but I think it is anti-Jewish agenda, and that this was one way of flexing their muscles, and they succeeded.
Could it be the case that the police, given, I think the police have many, many questions to answer. Again, I want to be clear, I'm not trying to lead you down a direction of being police bashing. You've said you don't want to do that, and that's absolutely fine. I wonder whether it is your opinion or whether you think it is possible that the police are in the eye of the storm here, perhaps because of the actions of others, perhaps for being unfair to the police.
Possibly.
Okay.
I mean, listen, we can't discount any of these scenarios that you've presented me with, and certainly the committee this afternoon, it was difficult to listen to, because they seem to be floundering in many ways, and that implies that there's something not right there. But I can only speak to you of how the police have engaged with our community and were prepared to do so in an honest and open way. And people either have to take it that that's how it was or it wasn't, and that's their individual decision.
You're someone who's put your head above the parapet. You are the chairwoman of the Jewish Representative Council for Birmingham and the West Midlands. You put your money where your mouth is. You're a semi-public figure. You're on national television talking about this, and I salute you for doing so. What I see time and time again, we had a call about 20 minutes ago, absolutely heartbreaking, from a woman called Jane, who we're actually going to invite on for a longer interview, saying that she wants to leave her home in Leeds. She wants to move to Israel. I'm looking at two news stories here, one about a Hamas supporter released from jail after entering Britain illegally in a dinghy, flaunting Christmas presents online from a Beale hostel. This is someone jailed for 9 months last year after live streaming videos of his cross-channel trip. I'm looking at another story here, a former contestant on The Apprentice, the BBC hit series, posting anti-Semitic, racist, sexist comments on social media. He is a cardiologist. He has written things like 9/11 wasn't an inside job. Let's call it for what it is, a Jewish job. Zionists are extremely strong. They have strong media, military and banking. They're a godless satanic cult. He ludicrously attempted to argue that he wasn't being anti-Semitic. When you see this, when you hear this, when you're on the front line here, you're seeing this anti-Semitism all the time. What is your thought about all of that? How do you deal with that, Ruth? Because I would imagine, as someone who has a website, as someone who is contactable, that you've been on the receiving end of some of this too.
I'm speaking personally now, not in any official capacity. I'm horrified by it. I think that the question of the prosecution of people who promote this sort of anti-Semitism, hate, genocide talk, I can't understand why more people aren't prosecuted. And certainly the doctor, it defies belief that people who have got some education could possibly say such things as though it was a Jewish plot for 9/11. It's just, I can't believe it. I have every sympathy with the lady who you say is thinking about leaving Britain. I don't feel, I've lived here all my life, and my family have, my grandmother, my great-grandmother were born here in the UK. I don't feel comfortable here as a Jewish person, but what I can tell you is that I'm also not surprised, grateful for the grassroots support from many people, not Jewish people, Christians, Muslims, some Muslims, moderate Muslims, but people of all faiths and none who have put forward, been in touch with our community, and I guess it's communities all around the UK, to say how sorry they are that this is all these horrible things are happening, and how they stand with us. Now, my feeling to that is it's time for the grassroots to stand up and speak loudly, and that the people who have a very loud voice here but are not in a majority get away with saying these things, and yet the grassroots of this country are not able, for some reason, to express it more publicly.
What should they do? What would you encourage them to do? Because there are a lot of people who are great. They put stuff on social media. They call it out in conversations. What strategies would you say, if you're listening right now, if you've got a Twitter account, if you're going to the break room in your office and people are saying casually anti-Semitic things, what would you say to the people who do want to stand up, who may not feel actually that they have a voice at all? What would your message to them be, Ruth?
I can understand that it's frightening to stand up as in the minority when people are very loud, but sometimes we all have to be activists, not bystanders. We saw certainly in the Holocaust what happened when people were bystanders, even though there were fantastic people who did wonderful things. But we all, Jews, people across the country, whether you've got a faith or no faith, if you think something's wrong, we have to stand up and say it. And that's painful at times, and difficult and alienating. I can tell you that from October the 7th onwards, I've been very involved for the last 30 years or more in interfaith work in this city, but I have felt very isolated since October the 7th, where the people that I've been engaging with in all these years have felt unable to be empathetic towards the situation that I and my fellow community have found ourselves in, which is really difficult. I mean, I understand about what people feel about, for example, the Palestinians and what's happening in Gaza, and there's many Jewish people who feel that things aren't right there or are concerned for them too. After all, we're all human beings. We all have life, and it's very easy to extinguish it, but we also have to be much more empathetic and supportive of each other in difficult times, and that these situations, certainly Israel-Palestine, is 2,500 miles away, and at the same time there are terrible things happening to Muslims and Christians and other faith communities in other countries, and it never gets mentioned.
You're absolutely correct, Ruth. And how much does the media talk about Nigeria, about the Christians there, about the Muslims there, about Sudan? I've talked about it on my programmes. Other people need to do it too. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but we do need to treat these things properly. Listen, it's been a privilege to speak to you, Ruth. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Do not be deterred by anybody or anything. I salute you, Ruth Jacobs, who is the chairwoman of the Jewish Representative Council for Birmingham and the West Midlands. What a dignified, solid and incredibly reasonable person Ruth is. She is plodding her way through, trying to negotiate a very, very difficult time for Jewish people in this country, and she is someone who has come on national television and talked about that from a local group. Lots